Let's talk about football a little bit, and it all kind of starts with one position. Obviously, Alabama will have a new quarterback under center or behind center when nobody goes under center anymore, but behind center when they travel to Tallahassee. We'll talk about the schedule in a few minutes too, but new quarterback, I mean, that's where it all kind of starts, right? And so talk to me about, I know you've been out there some, I know you've talked to some people and been around, but talk to me about what's going to be lining up or who's going to be lining up at quarterback for Bama this year.
Well, I created a little bit of a stir. I'm a regular on the Chuck Oliver show out of Atlanta. We carry it on our station, and Chuck, he put me on the spot. He said, "Okay, Drew, who do you think is going to be in Tallahassee taking the first snap?" And this was almost over a month ago, and he hadn't even got on campus yet. He hadn't even practiced, but I just said Keelon Russell, and I got a whoa. It kind of surprised him. He's the National Player of the Year. He's the highest ranked recruit. Think about this, TJ. Even Nick Saban, with all his recruiting chops and all the number one classes he signed, he never signed the reigning, National Player of the Year. Well, Keelon Russell was named the National Player of the Year. And he had a great career out of Duncanville, Texas. He was ironically committed to Rhett Lashlee and SMU before he blew up last summer in his senior year after having a great junior year. And Alabama flipped him from SMU, and I think he's an elite talent. Now, right now, he's not the starting quarterback. I think he's the most talented of the group, but he's not experienced. He's in a three-man race with Dylan Lonergan having transferred to play for BOB and Boston College. Probably start for BC. Ironically, with his starting quarterback from last year for most of the season, Castellanos probably going to start for Florida State. So I think, but right now, Ty Simpson is the leader in the clubhouse. He's been there 4 years. He's graduated. He's a redshirt junior. 2 years ago, I thought he would beat out Jalen Milroe, but he wasn't. He wasn't mature enough. He didn't handle things very well. He has very little experience, though. His only experience was in games that mattered was 2 years ago when he came off the bench in Milroe's first year and won an ugly game over at South Florida in your area over there in Tampa, 10-3. Where he was able to score a touchdown with under a minute left on a quarterback sneak. Didn't throw it all that well. He was okay. I still thought he might get a chance to play more, but he really didn't. Milroe won the team, got the job after being suspended that week, and then had a great year. And then he had a decent year last year, but with the transfer portal and the way Kalen DeBoer took over, he needed Jalen Milroe to be the starter and keep the team together. That's what happened. It resulted in a 9-4 disappointing year. Should have been a playoff year, in my opinion. Didn't work out. But now he has Ryan Grubb back from the NFL and the Seahawks to be the OC. His contract was just approved today, $1 million for Ryan Grubb, a 2-year, $2 million contract. They have a lot of synergy. They've been together every year of their coaching careers but two. And that was last year. And then I think 1 year at Fresno State. But he's done an amazing job. And they have a lot of synergy and chemistry. And so I think, from what I hear, Kalen DeBoer is the motivator, the good cop. Grubb is the bad cop. He's the one that gets in the faces, and he has an offensive line background. But, Nick Sheridan stayed to coach the QBs, and, he's going to coach Ty Simpson. From what I understand yesterday, Ty had 3 touchdown passes. And I know this name will be familiar to you being in the Sunshine State. One guy that's looking like he's going to make a big impact out of the portal for Alabama is Isaiah Horton, who was I think one of their top 3 receivers. I guess probably the third guy at Miami with Cam Ward, but had a really good year. He had 3 touchdown catches and dropped a 4th from Ty Simpson. So Isaiah had a really good scrimmage. He's been really good since he got there. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Kellen DeBoer and this staff are doing in year 2. They're trying to transform the wide receiver core. They didn't think it was nearly good enough. They thought they had Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, and nothing else. And Ryan had a great freshman year. I don't think he scrimmaged yesterday. They precautionary held him out. But Jeremy was good. But don't forget, when Kalen had it rolling at Washington in year 2, Jeremy was the 4th guy. He had 3 NFL players. In a first, a second, and a third round pick. And so they wanted to get more dynamic at the wide receiver position. They got Isaiah Horton in. They've got Jeremy back. And then they've got Ryan Williams. And then they've got a freshman who I heard scrimmage really well yesterday. Don't forget this name. He's from New Jersey. He was under publicized because he didn't go to camps and combines. It kind of reminds me of when I started hearing about Jalen Waddle coming in, because amazingly, Jalen Waddle was not a 5-star coming out of high school. It didn't take people long to figure out that he should have been. But this kid's name is Lotsier Brooks. He broke every record at his high school in New Jersey. I think he's the state record holder for catches and receiving yards and touchdowns. He's a very explosive kid, and so he's going to be heavily in the mix too. He had a good scrimmage because guys like Cole Adams are still recovering from injury. Jalen Hale's now practicing though, and I think he had a touchdown catch too. His injury last year, TJ, was a big key too, because he would have probably been in that top 3, and he hurt his knee and did not play at all. And so I think Alabama is going to be much more dynamic and explosive and more natural. I think the one thing that I've heard Keelon DeBoer was shocked at when he got here, and that just shows you even Nick Saban is not immune from some poor evaluations. He didn't think that the wide receiver core was nearly as talented as some others did, including myself. I thought they would be more productive last year. They didn't like the style, and so they're trying to be more explosive and surround the quarterback with more weapons, and that's what they're trying to do. And I think overall, whoever the quarterback is, and right now, if you had to ask me, I know what I said on Chuck Oliver. It does look like that Ty Simpson's taking the bull by the horns. He was elected to the leadership council this week. If he's matured, I like Ty in this offense. I think he's a drop back guy, but with a lot of athleticism and ability to move. And I think these 3 quarterbacks overall, Ty Simpson and then Keelon Russell and even Austin Mack, the guy that they brought with them from Washington, I think they're all better suited to the style of offense that Keelon had. It always stops, especially at Washington, which depended on accuracy, anticipation, and pocket presence from your quarterback, not so much the running aspect. I think this offense they're going to run the ball more, conventionally. I heard Jam Miller had a good scrimmage yesterday. He's the returning starter. And so I really think that Alabama will look more like what you saw at Washington under Keelon DeBoer than what we saw with it being so running-centric from the quarterback position last year.
What about on the defensive side of the ball? Maybe a name or two. I know we're early into spring. I know we're not this is not August 30th just yet. But a name or two on the defensive side of the ball that you kind of expect to take a jump this year, or maybe has had a good start to the spring and kind of is turning some heads on that side too. Quickly, Bama fans or fans of any team that may be watching this, make sure that you are remembering Alumni Hall when you're gearing up for spring football or spring sports all over, whether that be an elite basketball team, a really good baseball team, a good softball team. No matter what sport or team you're supporting across Alabama athletics, make sure that you are doing so with gear and clothing from Alumni Hall. CFA 15, that's CFA for College Football Addiction, will save you 15% at Alumni Hall, either in store, located in the Huntsville or Tuscaloosa locations, or online at alumnihall.com. They have the best and largest selection of officially licensed game day gear, brands like Nike, Champion, New Era, Peter Millar, and more. Bama fans, Alumni Hall is your official shopping destination, and I appreciate their support on this video.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, I do think that overall, Zabian Brown, who was a freshman All-SEC at the corner spot, who was an early enrollee last year, he had an interception yesterday, from what I understand in the scrimmage. I think he can take a big jump to being all SEC. They got Damani Jackson back as well, and don't forget this name. Right now, Keon Sabb, who transferred from Michigan, he was done for the year after a foot injury against Tennessee. He tried to play through it, was done after that week. He is missing the spring due to continuing to recover. But the guy that took over for him next to Malachi Moore is back, and I thought he really sparked them the second half of last year. And that's Bray Hubbard. Bray Hubbard is going to be, a guy that's a junior. He played a lot as a sophomore last year after not playing much early, basically being a special teams player. Very athletic kid, was a high school quarterback. I think Bray Hubbard could potentially be an all SEC type guy. And you get Sabb back. I think certainly he showed in the limited time we saw him about half a season that he can be a really good player out of Michigan. I think, last year the secondary was one of the biggest question marks, if not the biggest, on the defense. it could end up being, no doubt a strength. Because I think Alabama has done, a really nice job of recruiting. The Mo Linquist, who just got a raise as well, who came over from Buffalo, he has done a phenomenal job in recruiting and getting in outstanding players, on this team. And I think he's somebody to really watch. And I think Dejon Lee, don't forget, he's a Dre Kirkpatrick type guy. And what I mean by that is he's from Southern California, Mission Viejo, but he's a true, and these don't grow on trees, a 6'4" corner that can really move, can play the nickel as well. I think he's already having a big time impact. I would watch for number 5, Dejon Lee as a freshman. Another freshman in the defensive backfield, Ivan Taylor. You'll probably recognize his dad's name, Ike Taylor, who played for a long time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He flipped from Michigan. I think he's another DB that could play early. And then from a linebacker perspective, I think overall, when you look at it, I think they have several that are missing. Spring camp, spring practice because of recovering from injuries. But I think Deontay Lawson will be back. I think he'll be one of the better middle linebackers in the SEC. And I think overall, when you look at it, I would also watch on the defensive line for James Smith. James Smith, I thought, really came on at the end of last year. He's done a really nice job of developing his game. And then I think they've got a lot of, confidence in him. And I think Jeremiah Beeman, he played a lot in the bowl game and the bowl loss to Michigan, number 92. He's going to be considered still a redshirt freshman. He's another defensive lineman that could really come on. And I heard Tim Keenan, who's kind of one of the older guys, he's returning to play interior, play that defensive tackle spot. He had a really good scrimmage as well. So I would watch for him. I think those are some of the stalwarts on defense. And I think here's the thing that I think's kind of flown under the radar. Everybody focuses on, oh God, they lost to Oklahoma. They look so bad. That was more a quarterback issue. I know they gave up some rushing yards, but really when you look at Kane Womack and his defense after that debacle, and it was a debacle against Vanderbilt, they got shredded. They played really well the rest of the season. That defense did their job. They forced turnovers. They were able to rush the passer. I thought even with some injuries to that defense during the season, I thought they continued to play at a high level. And I think that low key, if they can get better production out of the defensive line and some of the guys I just mentioned, and I've heard LT Overton as well has been really good this spring, and I thought he had a good year, not a great one, but a good one. Now, if he can go from good to great, that's going to help Alabama. And I think the defense could be one of the top 3 or 4 in the SEC if some guys mature and get better. And now that they're used to playing in this Kane Womack system after having 17 years of no matter who the coordinator was, we all knew that it was Nick Saban's defense. And so it's a different deal now, a little bit more of attacking kind of stuff, maybe not as complicated. And I think Kane Womack and that defense can be pretty good. Honestly, I think the biggest question for Alabama coming out of spring practice is the special teams because they lost Graham Nicholson, a solid place kicker. Connor Talty supposedly had a good first scrimmage and made all his kicks, but he's a redshirt sophomore. We'll see what he can do. And they lost James Burnett, one of the best punters in the college football. I think he'll have a long NFL career. They lost their long snapper, Neil Hibbett. He's gone. So they're having to replace their long snapper. So they're having to replace all kind of the key stuff, all the key players, and then we'll see who's a kickoff and punt returner. But the special teams aspect is probably having to be rebuilt the most. But I think overall everybody's going to be watching the quarterback though in this offense because the offense was a little bit of a disappointment with the inconsistency under Kalen DeBoer, and that's going to be the key going into that opener, which is so intriguing against Florida State because I know you read the stories, and Greg Byrne went on the record with all this yay Alabama stuff and this ties the tide that binds that the top 2 candidates for the Alabama job are going to be coaching against each other. His 1A and 1B. 1A was Kalen DeBoer, 1B was Mike Norvell, and both of them are feeling some heat. Kalen certainly needs to make the playoff this year, I think, to keep everybody at bay. And I think Mike Norvell, I don't know what your thought is, but to me, I guess they've got to turn into a bowl team this year for him to hold on to his job at Florida State.
Yeah, different. Everybody, that word pressure is so funny in college football because there's 134 coaches with pressure on them this year, but it is different levels of pressure, right? Maybe the one that only has pressure the last week of the year is Ryan Day to finally beat Michigan, but even that, right? Like fans were trying to fire him before the playoffs started, and so yeah, everybody's got pressure, but yeah, the pressure that Norvell and DeBoer are under different. But yeah, I agree. They need to make a bowl. Alabama fans, this wasn't our only content with Drew. We have other segments that are either dropping or have dropped. So do me a favor, hit the subscribe button right now. Subscribe also on audio podcasts. You can listen to the entire interview in one sitting, and then stay tuned for more coming with Drew very soon.